Everyone expected the Russian to dominate. He had medals, footage, credentials forged in combat arenas across Eastern Europe. The Filipino standing opposite him carried none of that visible prestige. Yet when the first real exchange happened inside that private Manila training hall, the silence that followed felt heavier than applause. Something shifted in the room. Something no one from abroad anticipated. The visitor was a decorated combat Sambo specialist from Moscow, trained in systems built for efficiency and dominance. His style relied on explosive penetration steps, crushing clinches, and relentless takedowns. In Sambo philosophy, once you close distance and secure control, the fight becomes mechanical, predictable, inevitable. He had overwhelmed larger opponents before. This experiment in the Philippines seemed procedural. Across from him stood a Panantukan practitioner from Cebu City, representing a lineage shaped less by tournaments and more by survival. Panantukan, often misunderstood as dirty boxing, is a limb-oriented striking method. It does not chase knockouts first. It studies structure. It dismantles arms before they can grab. It disrupts rhythm before power fully forms. The meeting was arranged quietly in Manila. No public promotion. No championship belt. Coaches, security consultants, and martial artists lined the walls. The goal was simple and uncomfortable. Could a street-refined defensive system prevent a world-class grappler from establishing control? The Russian agreed confidently. The Filipino agreed calmly. Only one of them understood how subtle the confrontation would become. When the round began, the Russian lowered his level immediately. Sambo thrives on pressure. He cut distance with a practice shuffle, shoulders aligned for a double-leg entry. Observers recognized mechanics. This was textbook. Explosive, disciplined, decisive. The Filipino did not retreat far. He angled half a step offline, hands relaxed, eyes fixed not on the body, but on the incoming arms. The first contact did not look dramatic. As the Russian's lead hand reached to establish a post, the Filipino's forearm sliced inward with sharp, gunting motion. Bone met muscle. The strike landed on the bicep tendon. It was precise, not theatrical. The Russian's arm recoiled slightly. Not enough to stop him. Enough to register discomfort. He drove forward anyway. Power compensated for irritation. His second hand extended to secure the clinch. Another gunning intercepted it. This time, the Filipino's elbow followed, clipping the tricep nerve line. The Sambo specialist completed the forward surge, but lacked full arm engagement. He disengaged instinctively to reset. A minor interruption, but visible. The crowd expected the next entry to succeed. Sambo athletes are conditioned to absorb resistance and continue. The Russian circled briefly, recalibrating his timing. He dipped again, faster now. The Filipino's response changed rhythm. Instead of bracing, he struck the forearm diagonally, then tapped the wrist outward, altering its trajectory before grip could form. This was not brute defense. It was disruption layered in fractions of seconds. Each reaching limb met something sharp and targeted. Biceps absorbed knuckle drives. Forearms absorbed elbow compressions. Small structures carried accumulating strain. The Russian remained stronger overall, but the clarity of his entries began to blur. On the third serious shot, the Russian committed deeper. His shoulder penetrated closer to the hips. For a brief moment, it looked successful. Then the Filipino's palm snapped upward across the jawline, not with knockout force, but enough to shift eye focus. The head turned slightly. Balance adjusted unconsciously. The penetration angle collapsed. Again they reset. Observers along the wall exchanged glances. The Russian's breathing remained steady, yet his arms bore faint redness. Sambo relies on confident repetition. Each failed entry compounds frustration. He attempted a feint, hoping to draw a premature reaction. The Filipino did not overcommit. He waited for the real reach. When the reach came, it was met with a crushing downward elbow onto the forearm. A nerve compression followed near the wrist. The Russian flinched. This time it was visible. He disengaged more quickly than before. The room grew quieter. The expected chain wrestling sequence had not materialized. Panantukan does not chase dominance in obvious ways. It taxes the opponent's tools. Grip strength weakens subtly when biceps absorb repeated trauma. Timing falters when eye lines are redirected mid-entry. The Filipino never chased a knockout. He dismantled pathways instead. The Russian attempted to adjust strategy. He widened his stance, looking for a body lock rather than a leg attack. It was a smart adaptation. Close the distance fully. Eliminate space for limb strikes. He surged forward with heavier momentum. For a second, he achieved chest contact. But chest contact requires arms to close. As his hands wrapped, the Filipino's elbows compressed inward against the inside of the biceps, followed by short strikes to the floating ribs. Not fight-ending blows. Structural irritants. The Russian's grip tightened reflexively, then loosened as nerve pain spiked. They separated again. Sweat now mixed with tension. The Russian's expression changed subtly. Confidence had not disappeared, but calculation replaced certainty. He realized his entries were being studied in real time. Every attempt fed data into the Filipino's timing. Another shot came, lower and more explosive. The Filipino responded offbeat, striking during the transition between steps rather than at full extension. This disrupted balance mid-movement. The Russian stumbled half a step, recovered instantly, yet failed to secure the leg. The crowd shifted from anticipation to analysis. This was no longer about spectacle. It was about systems colliding. The Sambo specialist embodied institutional training, refined in academies near Moscow. The Filipino embodied adaptation shaped by environment and necessity. Minutes passed. Each exchange followed a similar pattern. Entry, interception, micro-damage, reset. The Russian's forearms now showed visible swelling. His shots grew slightly less explosive. Nothing dramatic, yet enough for trained eyes to detect fatigue creeping into the limbs responsible for control. Frustration is dangerous in grappling. It invites overcommitment. The Russian attempted one final decisive penetration, driving with full power. The Filipino sidestepped sharply, struck the tricep mid-extension, then pressed the head downward briefly, breaking posture without striking further. The Russian dropped to one knee momentarily, not from knockout force, but from disrupted balance and compromised arm strength. He rose immediately, pride intact, breath controlled. But something fundamental had shifted. His dominant pathway had been denied repeatedly. Coaches signaled a pause. The round ended without a submission or knockout. Technically, no one had finished the other, yet everyone in the room understood the outcome. The Sambo specialist had not imposed his will. The Filipino had not overwhelmed him with aggression. He had quietly prevented domination. Each limb destruction carried cumulative consequence. Each eyeline shift stole a fraction of certainty. The system worked not by overpowering, but by preempting power. After a brief rest, they resumed for confirmation. The Russian tried once more, this time cautiously. His entries were slower, measured. The Filipino mirrored the pace, intercepting without escalation. Again, no clean takedown materialized. When the final signal ended the session, applause did not erupt immediately. Silence came first, the silence of recalibration. The narrative many expected had not unfolded. The Russian approached the Filipino and extended his hand. Respect, not defeat, defined the gesture. He had encountered a defensive language unfamiliar to his training, one that attacked structure rather than ego. Observers later described the session not as a victory of striking over grappling, but as a lesson in entry denial. Panantukan did not try to win on the ground. It ensured the ground was never reached cleanly. In modern hybrid combat, athletes blend wrestling and boxing seamlessly. Yet this exchange in Manila demonstrated that older systems still hold relevance, especially those refined in environments where unpredictability defines survival. Raw power remains formidable. The Russian strength was undeniable, but power requires alignment, grip, and timing. When those elements are quietly eroded, dominance becomes negotiation. The experiment ended without spectacle, yet its message endured. In that quiet Manila hall, Filipino defensive mastery did not shout. It did not celebrate loudly. It simply endured, adapted, and redirected force until even elite authority paused in recognition. And sometimes that quiet pause is the clearest form of victory.